Welcome to It's What Our Characters Would Do, the podcast where a neutral good ranger and a chaotic neutral warlock talk about chaotic, talk about RPGs, roll funny dice, and give away some sweet loot. I'm Bob World Builder.
And I'm Grace World Destroyer.
She's the chaotic one. And today we're talking about... Oh my god. So chaotic, throwing dice everywhere. Gaming with strangers. And we're giving away a mystery set of dice from Only Crits, which felt really thematic for this episode of, like, you don't know what you're getting.
You don't know what you're going to get.
But first,
play with strangers.
But first, Grace, how are you feeling today?
It's good. It's Sunday.
It's a weird it's Sunday.
We had a pretty good D&D session last night.
It was a pretty goofy session, like unrelated to what we're talking about now, which with our regular group, but everyone was just like really silly.
Yeah, everyone was silly.
Extra silly, I guess. Our
player Ben has been really hyper for like the last 2 sessions.
Did he have coffee again?
No, he didn't have coffee this time. Okay. And I've been watching The Mighty Boosh, so like a lot of my NPCs were just wacky.
Yeah, it's been funny. So if you're not familiar, old Adult Swim show with a couple popular memes from it.
Yeah, Greg.
Yeah.
Chief among them.
And rewatch, like I've only seen snippets of from back in the day and now like popping in when Grace is watching it. But just hearing some of the humor on that show, like we talked about how it kind of fits in really well with like memes of today.
Yeah, like current
memes of
shitpost
a couple years ago.
Style of meme.
At the latest, yeah. Where it's just really off the wall stuff.
Yeah.
And so all that has been fueling...
All that fueled my behavior last night as Dungeon Master.
Yeah. So it was a fun session. We're cranking our way through Avernus. And I don't know. Things are good. Otherwise, Delve just wrapped up. There's actually been a bunch of late pledges now. So it's like the last few days were wild. Everyone's who had ran Kickstarters before was like, oh, those last 48 hours are going to be crazy. And I was like, why? Like, why would it be that crazy? But apparently...
Was it crazy?
It was. It went up a lot.
Wow.
It went from, like a week or 2 ago, we hit like 300,000. And that's when I was like, wow, this is already like more than we expected. Like
out of 10,000 required, I think. I looked at the
that's
Kickstarter
what we had set it
but...
as. But that's just sort of a Kickstarter thing where it's like you really need like 50 or so, but everybody just does 10 because it funds faster, and then that's like the Kickstarter algorithm is better. Like there's just weird things like that. But the point is, now it's like as of today, it's like almost 380.
Wow, I looked yesterday. It was 376 when I looked yesterday. Actually,
sure, but that's like I don't know. It was just like the whole like 20 days. Like I don't know why Kickstarters last a whole month, because it's like the first 4 days and then like the last 4 days are when pretty much everything happens. I think it's time to get into our topic of today's episode.
The meat and flesh.
The potatoes or the flesh?
Of the topic.
Yeah. And so that means we're ready for the quick build. Why do I always like forget the one segment of this episode where we try to summarize our topic/goal for this episode in exactly 3d6 words. I think it's your turn to roll. My turn to speak.
Oh, okay. 14 words.
Okay, pretty normal. Today, we discuss the ups and downs of gaming with people you don't know.
Yeah, that is what we're doing.
Yeah, what brought this topic on, Grace?
We went to Dungeon Masterpiece / Baron Derop's Green Dragon Fest 2 weeks ago now?
Yeah, it's already been 2 weeks.
Yeah, and it was amazing. Life-changing experience.
Certainly RPG life-changing experience. Because I really did feel like I came away with knowledge and experience that changed the way I'm going to do things a little bit.
Yeah, I learned some things as a player, because I played. You DM'd.
Yeah.
I got to play. I helped run the check-in table too, but mostly I just got to play. Next year, I'm hoping to DM.
So wait, we should probably describe the event.
What is it? So Green Dragon Fest is an event held in Knoxville, Tennessee at a place called Ancient Lore Village, which is a legally distinct shire.
Yep.
And basically, Baron got a bunch of dungeon masters to run games for players, about 40-something people.
Yeah, it was like 40 or 50 guests.
40 or 50 guests. It was kind of like a rotating thing where all the DMs just had one adventure that they had written, and the players would change each game. Yeah. So Bob played with a different group every time. There were 3 sessions that each DM ran. And I also played with a different DM every time.
Oh, and actually, I should mention that I have since published the adventure I wrote on my Patreon. Is right now, I think, the only place to get it. But by the time this hits YouTube, then in 1 week, it'll be available on like TTRPGs or whatever. But when that happens, I'll just put links in the description if you want to check it out. It turned out to be a really fun one-shot. But yeah, there were definitely things that I learned in like writing a one-shot that needs to fit in a couple hours. We had like a 4-hour time slot for each of these sessions, playing with like 5 or 6 people who we've never played with before. And also, you know, we don't know their experience necessarily with different role-playing games going into it. So there was just like a lot of things that we like had to try to fit correctly to make these sessions work well. And I think they all pretty much did. Like everybody, it seemed like, had an awesome time just hearing from, you know, guessing about other sessions and stuff too. I'm not just talking about my own. But yeah, there were definitely things that I feel like, oh, if I did this a little differently, it could have been better and whatever. So that was sort of a tangent about like the GM side. I guess I can talk about what those things were, but what was your like maybe general experience as a player on that side?
I did some wacky
Yeah, okay. So this is why I was like hamming up the chaotic part at the intro.
So I played with Runehammer, Arcane Library, Scotty, DM Scotty, and oh man, Alex. I don't know his last name.
Alex Alvarez of what's the channel? Ultimate Effort Show.
Ultimate Effort Show. Yeah. Yes. I think Runehammer's was probably the most unique of the sessions that I played because he had a whole gimmick where we didn't even really use a system.
Yeah, he called it a meta LARP.
Yeah, a meta LARP. So we played as lords in a tower.
Yeah.
And we had sworn our lives upon our chains of lordship that we would not leave the tower while our land was in danger. And there was danger coming from all directions. Our characters, ourselves, which are basically like just lords with like 1 hit point, are just like sitting
I didn't know that.
in a tower. Very vulnerable people, just like people. We're in a tower and we could command our loyalists to defend the land to the best of our abilities. And we also had individual goals that we were trying to meet. My goal was to get rid of a sword, a weapon called the Green Dragon. I had been charged by the moon spirits to see that it is never used by mortal hands because it's too dangerous. One of my fellow players, DM Scotty, actually, his goal was to find and use the sword to defend the land. So there was some like backstabbing and spying between the two of us, but ultimately DM Scotty had the ability to call one of his loyalists into the tower to kill another lord. So he tried to kill me, my character, my actual character, so that he could get his hands on the sword before my loyal druids sent it to the moon realm beyond mortal reach forever. Instead of just sitting there and letting my head get chopped off, I instead chose to discard my chain and become Tiger Face. That's what I called it in the game. I went full Tiger Face and murdered DM Scotty's character. I didn't intend to kill him, actually.
Right. It was like the threat, thinking that he would use
I wanted to threaten him enough that he would use his action to defend his person instead of using his final action to prevent the sword from going to the moon realm. He did not do that. He didn't do what I wanted. So my character accidentally killed his.
Yeah.
And we got into like a blood coin standoff because we had a coin. Each person had a coin that if you put down the coin, you say, I and all my loyalists will give everything to make this one thing happen, to defend this bridge, to kill this creature, whatever. Yeah. His was to stop the sword from going to the moon realm. Right. And I put mine down to send the sword to the moon realm. So it wound up being that another lord came in who actually commanded a stand-in for you because each of our loyalists were based on one of the DMs at the gathering. At the gathering.
The fest, yeah.
And it wound up being that lord sent your stand-in to help send the sword to the moon realm.
Okay.
So in the end, I succeeded. And in the end, in fact, my character was the only one that lived, albeit...
was the tower, like, swarmed?
The tower was swarmed.
Oh.
My character jumped out the window and in the epilogue was, like, a meerkat in the mountains at the end, but could never return to human form because I said I can't do that if I have shed blood in my sacred animal form. I cannot return to human form. So I guess I became a meerkat.
Yep. And that was all like very obviously fascinating. People, like everyone was talking about Runehammer's sessions just because it was so different than what anybody else had planned. Like obviously, like you said, it wasn't really a tabletop role-playing game.
Yeah.
So which was kind of what everyone was expecting.
It was more just role-playing.
And what everyone else prepared. So yeah, it was really cool. And everyone had these, like he brought actual, well, they were like plastic, but everyone had these actual gold chains that he was giving out as people were like wearing them around. And then Scotty had two.
Yeah. So the goal was to keep your chain through the thing, but I had to give mine up in order to meet my goal. Yeah. So I wound up giving mine to Scotty because I was like, you claimed my chain from me, so you deserve to have mine. Yeah. So Scotty had two. I think everyone else had one. I think I was the only one that wound up without a chain.
Well, and I think it's partially also because then the second session, he said that all the lords like worked together. Yeah. Like despite the fact that they had these like built-in roleplay differences, they all like put aside the differences and decided to like unite. So definitely everyone survived in that one. And then in the third one, I guess he still gave out the chains, but I don't know how relevant they were. He played a different game.
Yeah, Viking Death Squad instead.
Yeah.
Because he said, like, this isn't something that I can run too many times. Yeah, and I think it was weird that people were expecting an actual system and weren't really used to operating without a rule set.
Yeah.
To like
it was really just
their...
like you said, like kind of a LARP. I mean, I've never done a LARP. I feel like that usually does involve more.
Yeah, even mechanics. LARPs have mechanics.
But this was pretty much full on like make believe, I guess, with a couple hardline mechanics of like you can use this coin to go all out on something, and there was an interesting mechanic of like one player controlled a skull or something that would end
so that
the round.
The person with the skull had the power to end a round.
Yeah.
And also to end the game when they decided it was over.
Yeah, and that's so interesting to me. But because I feel like obviously it puts a lot of pressure on that person, I think.
Yeah.
To make.
I think the guy who held the skull in my game, he used it very well. Like he always let everyone finish their turns.
Yeah.
And then at the end, when it was starting to draw out and people were just kind of arguing too much, he was like, "Okay, we're done now."
Okay.
So he ended it at the perfect time. He had really good
stuff.
Storytelling know-how. In the way that he chose to end it.
And so I'll chime in here and say that one of the things, now I didn't get to play in this, unfortunately, but just hearing everyone raving over this, as well as stuff that you told me about from Alex Alvarez's session that you played in, one thing that I learned as a GM, and now this is going to be a little different playing with strangers versus friends, but I think I want to lean into giving characters some disagreements in their role play. Just like seeding those kind of ideas. That's stuff that I was interested in from Rime of the Frost Maiden. Had like characters were supposed to have secrets, like their own goals that could sometimes like clash with another character's goals. And I don't think we ended up like using them that much in that campaign. But hearing how people like really went crazy with it, or even like defied those goals that they had, you're building in these great seeds for role play, and in a way helping the players, not only immediately tie themselves to the campaign, but really give them like something to fight for that they don't have to come up with themselves, because like not every player is going to want to do that. So like that's something as a GM that I want to try to do more, and I'm already like planning that for the next like the DCC thing I want to run, just at least for the first like adventure of it.
I think that kind of thing, like setting opposing goals for your players, lends itself really well to short campaigns and one-shots.
Yeah.
Because the stakes are lower, and in most of these campaigns, they were pre-generated characters too. Yeah. So it's not like anyone put their heart and soul into a character and their backstory only to have them killed by another player.
Yeah. And I guess, there's a level of extremity to it.
There were also like extra pre-gen. So like if someone did die in like PvP or whatever, like they could just come back right in the next scene. So it wasn't like drama between people.
Yeah. And so I guess I can add the caveat of like, for this next campaign, I said it's like DCC. You're expected to lose characters in the first session.
Everyone's disposable in DCC.
And I'm also not making them life or death things. It's not that extreme, but it's like you have different beliefs.
Well, you think it's not going to be that extreme.
But that's the thing. I then am giving the players the flexibility to take it as far as they want or not as far as they want.
I can already predict who's going to take it as far as possible.
Well, it depends which one they get. Because I'm still deciding if I want to give people specific ones then, or if I want to just randomly distribute them.
Yeah, I'm probably...
Some of them will be more extreme than others.
In what I want to run for the next Green Dragon Fest, if I wind up on the roster...
which I think you will.
There will be things like that.
Yeah. And then so to maybe quickly summarize the other... I think
Squeak's just trying to get in the office.
Quickly summarize the other sessions you played in.
Yeah.
Kelsey's.
In Kelsey's, or Arcane Library, creator of Shadow Dark, for anyone who doesn't know that.
Yeah.
There was like...
Hang on, I'm just going to let her. Okay, the cat is here.
Yes. Okay. So in the Shadow Dark game, we were basically charged with going to this cave because the dragon that lived in there was away, and we had the opportunity to steal its treasure. And when we got in, we learned that there was a hidden order of devotees to the Lost, which is two deities, two unnamed deities, except I have named them, but I won't say their names. Two unnamed deities. And part of this dragon's treasure was an extremely powerful artifact of those deities. And we learned that if the priestess of this sect got her hands on this artifact, she would be able to basically become the second coming of one of the Lost. Well, eventually we found this artifact, and the dragon was soon to arrive. And my character grabbed the artifact, and Kelsey was like, "Do you touch it with your bare hands?" And I was like, "Yeah." Because why not?
Right.
And I had to make like a saving throw against something, but I succeeded. And then I was like, so we know if we bring this egg to the priestess, it was an egg, it was a dark, shadowy egg, she will have her apotheosis, right?
Become
and I was
a
like,
god.
What if I had the apotheosis? So I had to make a religion check. I succeeded. I rolled a natural 20 and became a dark goddess, second coming of the Lost. Played out the rest of the session with like an archmage stat block. And we were able to defeat the dragon. And then my character just stayed in the temple as a dark goddess. Another one of the players who had been really leaning into like kind of messed up necromancer type, transformed all of the dragon's followers into zombies and walked out into the desert with them. So now we're like, the epilogue is the lich of the desert wastes versus the dark goddess.
Oh, I didn't even hear that part.
That's what I messed with in Kelsey's game.
Yep. And let me think, was there anything? I don't know if there's anything in particular from that one that I learned, but if anything, looking at it now, it's like I didn't give my players much of a chance for like an epilogue because they were playing pre-gens and it was kind of as a way to like tie it up really quick. I just had a prepared like description basically. Assuming, like not knowing how they would achieve this, but assuming the outcome was the same because it all kind of steered toward one point. That, yeah, I just kind of had that like written in. And everybody seemed to enjoy it, but I think there's obviously more of a personal touch if it's like you can include them in whatever that epilogue will be.
Yeah. And then for Scotty's game, I played, so this was Easy D6, which is his system that he made. I played as a goblin caster. I forget what it was called, but it's basically like wild magic.
It's like blaster or something?
Yeah, blaster. Yeah. Where your whole thing is just blowing stuff up with wild magic explosions. I also chose an ability that allowed me to just turn into a puddle of goo at will. So that was pretty fun to just be this little gremlin, this little, like, I think, what was my name?
It was really goofy, but I don't remember it off the top of my head.
Something the Moist, because I was wet all the time because of the whole goo thing.
Was it like Sporngus or something?
Yeah, Spoingus the Moist, I think. But in the end of that one, we found like a dragon wormling, because like it was an old dragon in this cave that was dying and its spirit was going to go into its wormling. There was an evil wizard that betrayed us at the end. I knew immediately upon the wizard character being revealed that he was going to betray us.
Yeah. Well, that was, and having them played in that session, that didn't even require the grace level of foretelling of the session. It was literally just like not so overtly evil, but like weird vizier kind of assistant.
So the vizier gives
character.
Everybody like a talisman that is supposed to protect you from poison.
Right.
And I was like, okay, something weird is going to happen with this talisman.
Yeah, he also at least in our session, he intentionally like kind of made it sus.
Yeah.
Like what those things
So I
for.
did like a magic check as like my class was able to determine if an item was magical. So I was like, okay, is this even magical? And it was, but I couldn't tell what it actually did. But I was like, it does something else besides protect us from poison for sure. Anyway, in the end, it was revealed that it like created a portal for this wizard to come. Mm-hmm. And the wizard wanted to take the power from the dragon instead of letting it go into the wormling. So while the other characters were all fighting the wizard and a really cool demon that it summoned.
Yes.
My character went to the dragon wormling and helped it to escape. Mm-hmm. And then after the battle was done, the wizard was killed, and so was the demon. Actually, I think the demon was exorcised in the first round by our cleric, so like we didn't even really have to fight it. In the epilogue of that campaign, my character went to the dragon wormling and taught it to blow stuff up, and became its parent, basically.
Okay.
And then finally, in Alex's campaign, this one was more sci-fi, so it was a change of pace from the high fantasy of the other campaigns that we played.
Running Index Card RPG,
yes. I believe. I played for the first half as a synthetic, so like a robot.
Yeah.
My goal was to destroy this antivirus that was going to protect people from an alien plague, where most of the other characters were trying to not succumb to the virus. Some of them were trying to protect the antivirus. Yeah. One of them was like a corporate suit. He was called the Suit. That was what the class was. Who was also trying to escape the ship with an egg at any cost, like an alien egg. But I played it to the extreme of like, this AI has no regard for human life, and I had like a battle form that was terrifying, and just
went all out.
Yeah, I was killed eventually for doing that, and then I had to play a pilot who was much more like altruistic and wanted to save the ship but still prevent the alien virus from getting out. And that one had a pretty crazy ending because two of the players were like the scout and the captain were like really close, very good at working together through the whole thing. But then at the end, they realized they had different goals.
Oh.
One of them wanted the ship destroyed at all costs. The other one had been charged to return the ship to the company because they had his family and were going to kill his family if he didn't return the ship. So it was like a Mexican standoff, like a 4-way Mexican standoff. My second character died. I think the ship did end up getting destroyed, but then the suit had escaped with the egg. So probably not good news for the rest of the galaxy.
Yeah, yeah, but that's so cool. That's the other great example of like, one shot, how you can really give them these extreme ultimatums
yes.
of what they must do. Really interesting choices baked into that. And so I guess first half of this is going a little long. Would you say that you enjoyed playing with strangers?
I did enjoy playing with strangers. But what I want the takeaway from this to be is that if you are playing in an event like this, I mean, with these people in particular, like we know a lot of these DMs. Right. I think what a lot of them were looking for, and you even told me this, was the new player, like wide-eyed, doesn't know what they can't do yet.
Yeah.
They wanted that energy, and so I brought it. Yeah. Even though I knew theoretically what I shouldn't be able to do, I still asked.
Right. Well, I would say like I think that was kind of a highlight of Runehammer's game is like there really was no rules. And it's like, so no one could have known what they should or shouldn't be able to do. Yeah. And we're even told like you have this thing that means like you can exhaust like all your power or whatever. So it's like you went fully into that. And it was also like my other takeaway that kind of like locked that in for me was talking with DM Scotty the one night, because he's, I guess, DM'd at a lot of conventions and things before, whereas like this is the first time I'd ever done it. While I have run for strangers, they were always like patrons, on my Patreon, or kids who already bring that kind of energy. And with the patrons, they were more like ongoing things. Like I got to know these people pretty well, or at least, know their play style anyway. So we were all really comfortable playing together. But what Scotty said was like, in this kind of setting, the GM, as much as you want the players to bring that kind of energy to like go wild and just like have a crazy time, the GM really needs to like enforce that and exhibit it to like show the players and just tell the players like, this is how I want you guys to act. And I guess that's still maybe just something I have in common with Scotty is like we're both kind of goofy game masters, I think. Scotty himself is like laughing the entire time. He's like running the game and like doing all kinds of silly voices and stuff, even more than I do for sure. But that was something that like in my first session, I thought I did really well. In the second session, like there were fewer players, but I noticed like, even though it was fun, I feel like the energy was like a little lower. The players were more like focused on like completing the mission, and it like worked. But then we like finished in quicker time and stuff. But then in the third session, after I had talked to Scotty, I was like, okay, I'm gonna really like lay down that I want you guys to like try insane stuff, things that you think I should say no to, treat it like, a home game. And then they ended up exploring like the most things. They like really just went all over the place and like took that adventure in different directions than the other groups had.
Yeah. And I went into these games knowing that that's what the GMs were looking for. And then after the games, the players would be like, wow, I didn't know we could do that. And
right.
I was like, neither did I, but I just tried it.
Yeah.
and you should too.
Yeah. And I think there's an extent to which it's like, of course, is a little different coming from you because, like you said, you knew those GMs.
Yeah,
if, like,
that helped a lot.
Stranger would like try to, can I become the chaotic god or whatever? It could be taken a different way. I also think like what you were saying is though, those GMs are also super experienced and like kind of have seen everything. So they also want the players to do crazy stuff.
So like not every GM at a convention is actually looking for this kind of behavior.
Yeah.
But the GMs that I was playing with were not strangers. The co-players were strangers.
Yeah.
So I guess I did feel more comfortable doing this where before I might not have.
Yeah, if you were playing in a group of people, all people that you didn't know?
Probably out of fear of judgment, because I guess a lot of things that I did could be seen as like spotlight grabby, maybe. Yeah. Even though that really was not my intention. It's just I would have this thought and be like, can I do it?
Yeah. Like in this environment, you were, just to be clear for everyone listening, Grace was praised for this every time. And like people from other groups like who weren't in the sessions were like talking about stuff that Grace did. Like she was a celebrity here as much as any of the GMs for sure.
Especially like with the becoming a dark god afterward, I kind of felt like, I just became like really powerful after that. And I know that's not really fair to the other players. And I talked to the other players about it and I was like, was that okay? Like I'm sorry if that wasn't fun for you, but they were like, no, that was awesome.
Yeah, I mean, again, in the one-shot environment, I think it's also like that should be more accepted by everyone. Like there will be players who will be like, it kind of ruined my fun because then you were way more powerful than me. But like in a one-shot, it should be like, no, you should be able to enjoy the other players' fun too. I don't know. That's my perspective on it. It's
better because it's not like one player gets all this power and then keeps all this power for like 10 more sessions after that.
Right.
So if you're playing in a game with strangers, try to be wacky. If that's the energy, like if you're doing it and people are matching your energy, then keep it up. But of course, like listen to the boundaries of other players. If people seem like they're not enjoying what you're doing, then stop.
Right. I think like try to
gotta read the room.
Bring some of that energy, but then of course like be fully aware of how it's being received and know whether or not it's like, and I mean that by like how the GM is taking it and the other players, because like maybe the other players are into it, but the GM's then like losing their minds like and thinks everything is totally off the rails.
And like doesn't really know how to handle But like we said, a lot of these GMs were very experienced and have seen everything, and so we're prepared for this type of thing happening.
Yeah. I think now we're definitely overdue for a little break. Let's take a tiny break.
Yep.
Woo. Now it's time for a random encounter, where we roll to read your stories and questions generally about this topic. And the person who wrote our favorite story or question takes home that mystery set of dice from Only Crits.
2.
From Guru Gru. I played D&D through a club in my college. The first campaign I joined was okay. I enjoyed the game, but I didn't really click with anyone in the group. This most recent semester, I joined another group through this club, and there was so much chemistry. The hijinks are high and jokes are flowing. The most recent group is the best group I've played in, even more than my family group. So I guess playing with strangers can be a bit of a gamble, but it can really pay off.
That is a true fact.
Yeah. I guess we didn't really talk about the other times. Well, I mentioned times that I played with strangers in the first half, being patrons and or kids at my job, and the kids knew each other, I guess, actually. So even though I didn't know them, they all knew each other, and, they were kids. So they were just, like, goofing off, and it was really fun. But besides that, I think the only other sessions that we played with strangers were at game stores twice, one free RPG day, and a couple times at a game store before we had moved to Maryland.
Yeah, I didn't enjoy any of that.
Yeah. And I have since learned that the one we played at free RPG day, that adventure specifically, it was like one of the adventures in Ghosts of Saltmarsh, is apparently like horribly designed and written. So I blame the GM less and less the more I think about that
There
session.
was that whole thing about like not knowing what deity the temple was supposed to be to, that I was
but apparently there's a lot of
apparently
missing
it's just not even in there.
It's just not set up for the players to have a good time, honestly. Yeah. But yeah,
I
the other
will
ones
forever blame them for the whole like, oh, you rolled perception high enough to avoid all the skeletons. Well, here they are all at once anyway.
Yeah, there was still some weird stuff going on for sure. So I don't know. I guess our other stranger sessions were kind of misses, but at the same time, it's like we still had some fun. It's still like good memories, I guess. Like we still think about those sessions.
Yeah,
or at least I do.
I have good memories about how bad they were.
Yeah, it's like funny to look back on. Definitely a gamble. But what I think made sense here was the hijinks and the jokes were flowing. So it's really just like hitting the right sense of humor maybe too with groups, and just that energy level, kind of what we were talking about before.
4.
Once I desperately needed players to... this is from Kevin Broussard. Once I desperately needed players to make up for 2 people suddenly dropping out of a campaign that the other players really wanted to continue. I was so desperate that I reached out to a local Facebook group. This was 2018, I think. and got 2 guys who were interested. So I set up a meeting with both them at a local coffee shop just to make sure they weren't weirdos in a way that would make me or my players uncomfortable. I only play D&D with nice weirdos. Glad I did that. One of them said some alarming things even within an hour of meeting him. But the other guy was cool, and he played with us for a couple months after that before moving out of state for work. Man, I want to know what those alarming things were.
Yeah, me too.
The guy said. But that's a really smart idea, too. If you are inviting people to play in a random game, you know, probably if it's all random people, have the whole game in public. You know, don't just like invite strangers to your house. But definitely if it is going to be sort of a home game that you have established, meet, the other people. Yeah, don't let them know where your house is
before you meet them once. Kind of like how if you're going to go on a date from someone on Tinder, don't let them pick you up at your home. Safety tip.
And then look out for alarming things being said in the first hour.
Yes. 6.
Okay, here's a long one from Mini Moose. Feels like a real gambit gaming with strangers, but there's a big difference between convention play and private group play. Outside conventions for personal play, I've had DMs and players agree to sessions after discussing them in detail and then never show up and ghost without actually meeting them. I've had 2 players seem to really click with the group and seem to enjoy themselves, then never show back up a second time. And one said he didn't think it was a good fit. Another time, she kept making excuses for being unable to attend, so we had to write her off. We've also had an instance where a stranger was recruited to join a group, and he was a bad fit that annoyed everyone across multiple sessions, such that eventually we didn't invite him back. At cons, everyone is generally more or less enjoyable. I think because they've made a commitment to sign up and play a particular game just for that one session. Even if you don't love the way people play, it's less bothersome subconsciously because you know it's just a single event. I played at con games where the GM was way more dramatic and in character, getting up from the table, screaming out in pain, on the ground RPing aberration victims, than I was prepared or comfortable reciprocating, but still at a decent time. I've played in a family RPG session where one of the children was very shy and her mother had to consistently coax her to contribute and behave. That same session I was disappointed because the GM running the event did not seem to have come prepared with a scenario and villain information pre-rolled, and we had to wait while he came up with that information at the table. But again, it was overall still a positive session, just not as good as it could or should have been. But nothing ventured, nothing gained. Just make sure to meet strangers in a public place to get to know beforehand before giving them your home address. Bingo.
Yeah. Safety tips.
Yeah, and, good resonating points here about, like, a one-shot. I guess even at conventions, people are usually bringing the energy that, like, hey, we're going to let more fly here than usual, even though you might not know what you're getting into.
I wonder if these convention experiences were specifically, like, Adventures League.
Oh, I don't know.
Because I feel like the rules for Adventures League of, like, having to have your character built a specific way with
that all
certain
kind of
items available. Yeah,
but we're so homebrew, so it's other people will really like it.
But then in that one, like, Salt Marsh one-shot for Free RPG Day, the GM was, like, very much like, oh, I want to make sure these players are Adventures League legal. And we're like, we don't really do Adventures League. But then they were like, I don't want anyone to look at these characters and be like, what GM helped build these? It's like, not like we would ever, I don't even remember the person's name now. So
I think I do. But anyway, I kind of understand that because it's like those GMs kind of have a responsibility to uphold those rules for future GMs that those characters could be played with. But again, that's why, like, I just don't think we're a good fit for that kind of style. We really make up our own stuff.
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't do Adventures League now.
Yeah, I'd have to be pretty desperate. I'd rather go to one Adventures League just to siphon players from it. Just be like,
like after the game, just be like, hey,
just to like the one or two people who like
game?
Again, whose energy and sense of humor really lines up. Be like, hey,
let's
hang out. Yeah.
3.
From Simeon Snow, what is your favorite way to get TTRPG strangers to unfreeze and open up? Icebreakers, or more like random jokes/humor to get people out of their shells? Maybe a pie in the face.
Probably not a pie in the face.
I don't know. That could be interesting.
Probably for me, like, try to invite them into whatever chaotic shit I'm doing.
True. Like, when you're setting up whatever scheme is about to happen, you got to, like, give them or, like, ask them if they want to, like, do certain duties, like, tasks in that scheme. I was, as a GM, the things that I told, my players in that third session, like somewhat in the first session, but then really with like emphasized in the third one after talking to Scotty was like, ask me things that you think I'll say no to. Interrupt me. I was like, not when I'm reading a description, but other times feel free to be like, wait, like question. Like literally just interrupt me. Don't interrupt other players necessarily. Because like that's what people do in our home game. It's like, so I feel like I was just thinking, we're just thinking about what are things people do in my home game that are going to make it feel like a home game to me. So then I'm running like I'm giving that home game energy off, and then they'll also hopefully reciprocate it. So that was all part of it. And also I feel like when I was even describing like the house rules, like I purposely introduced some of our heroic house rules, like hero coins, where you can re-roll stuff and you earn them by trying to do crazy and epic things. So like literally gamify and incentivize the goofiness in some way. Again, especially as a GM, still like reading the room, because you don't want somebody to like have some goofy sense of humor that's like, I don't know, off the table for another player.
Yeah, our last night session had a lot of poop jokes.
It did.
Fart jokes. That's not typical for us.
No.
And normally it would be cringy for me, but last night it was funny for some reason.
All right. Next one. There might only be one left. I don't know.
Is it 5?
Yeah, it's got to be this one. Okay. From What If Brigade. Millions of years ago at a gaming convention at the now demolished Thunderbird Motel in Minnesota, I participated in a D&D event where I basically knew nobody, and also a live-action Star Trek event where I knew one person but nobody else. The D&D game was a little dull, honestly. We were supposed to fight a lich. Not sure anyone at the table knew how to do that. The Star Trek game was fun. I didn't understand the setting nor mechanics, but I was still able to be involved. Probably a lesson in there somewhere. Well,
I don't know what the lesson is.
Yeah, I don't either. I feel like I've kind of circled through my points over and over again, I feel like. But yeah, good questions and stories all around, I feel like. And for sharing our favorite story/question, this episode's loot winner is Simeon Snow, for just straight up asking the question of how do you get people in the right headspace for a fun one-shot with strangers. You're going home with a mystery set of dice from Only Crits. Woo!
Yay!
And if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend and smack that like button.
Smack it.
Please subscribe and consider supporting the station directly by joining as a YouTube channel member or as a patron. Our members and patrons get early access to every episode, and patrons get other cool rewards, including a private RSS link to listen to your favorite podcast platform. Thank you for your support, and keep building.
Stop building.